Hi friends. I made a recent video about what I feel is a fairly underutilized pentatonic scale, and I gave a few examples of using that scale over that video, which I'll link here, uh, or here I guess, is the examples I gave was using it on a minor 2-5-1 in a minor key. So 2 minor 7 flat 5, 5 7 altered, and a 1 minor 7 chord. But there are many more uses for this scale, and I thought I'd do a bit of a deeper dive into finding other uses and a process that I go through to find more uses for sounds that I really like. And this can apply to chords, chord voicings, or scales. And today we're going to do this pentatonic scale, but I have another video using this similar concept about chord voicings that you like. And again, I'll link that one here. So you can check that out if you find this interesting. This is the scale. C, in this example, we're using the key of C. So C, D natural, E flat, G, and A. And those are the intervals, the root, the one. I'm going to use one for the root, the major second, the minor third, flat third, perfect fifth, the sixth. And this could be used over any of these chord types. Minor 6, minor 7, minor 9, minor 11, any normal minor-ish chord, this pentatonic would work over. And that's all well and good. And someone did put a nice comment in that other video that I mentioned calling this the Dorian pentatonic. And that's a great name for this example because it's essentially a Dorian scale without the fourth and without the seventh. So that's one way to think about it. But that only works along for these chord types. We're going to look at this scale across many chord types, and I'm going to take you through that process of how I do it, and hopefully you'll get some uses for this. So here's the final product. Again, the chromatic scale going this way. We're going to treat each row as this note was the root, and if this were the root, what would these notes be? What would the intervals be if these were the notes? So if C sharp or D flat was the root, then C would be the seventh, D would be the flatted second, E flat would be the second, G would be the flatted fifth, and A would be the flatted sixth. We don't really have anything. I crossed this out in red because that's not really a useful scale. We've got the second, the flatted second and the second together. It's not something we really use. So I'm throwing that one away. We go to D natural. If D were the root, C would be the flatted seventh, D is the root, E flat the flat second, G the perfect fourth, A the perfect fifth. That works great for a D7 sus with a flat 9. So if we have a D7 sus, this kind of a sound, and we play the scale over it, I'm playing these notes, right? Sounds great. It works very well over that chord quality. So continuing, you can basically see if again, we'll take one more example. If E flat was the root, C would be the sixth, D would be the seventh, E flat, of course, is the root, G is the third, A is the perfect fourth. Well, these intervals work great over an E flat major 7 sharp 11. Here's an E flat major 7 sharp 11 chord. And again, if I play those notes, sounds awesome. So this is the idea, major 7 sharp 11, and you can just basically see the map. We've got a dominant 7th chord with natural tensions, the 9th and the 13. We've got a diminished 7th chord, it's in green, I'm going to explain that in a second, an augmented dominant chord, minor 7 flat 5 works very well because we've got the root, flat 3rd, 4th, flat 5th, flat 7th, basically an A minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio with the 4th in there. B major 7, it's in green. I'll come back to that one in a minute. And an altered dominant, very useful sound over an altered dominant because we've got the outside shell sound of the 3rd and the flat 7 making a dominant chord, but we also got the 3 altered tensions, the flat 2, the flat 3, and the flat 6, or if we think of the higher octave, the flat 9, the sharp 9, and the flat 13. So a B7 altered sound like this, we get this. Works awesome over that. So you can see lots of different chord qualities that this single scale can work over. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the greens because I put them in green because they're a little bit not as ideal. So for example, the F sharp diminished 7, we've got the flat 5, the flat 6, and the natural 6, which kind of implies this diminished sound, flat 9 and flat 3. So it depends, there's a lot of different things you can do, like the different whole half diminished scales. So I'm going to kind of leave that one for a second. I also put the G7 augmented in green because it's got the 4th, the 5th, the flat 6, which is enharmonically the augmented interval, the root, and the 2nd. So that 4th leaves it a little bit funky, but another idea that's extending this a bit is like, what if we tweak the scales a bit to meet all of our chord qualities? So for example, pentatonic means it's just a 5-note scale. It doesn't mean it has to be any particular 5 notes. What if we altered this particular scale, this C natural, which is the 4th on G, what if we made that a B natural instead? So this would become the 3rd. So we would have the 1, 2, 3, 5, and flat 6. So if I play a G augmented chord and I play the scale 1, 2, 3, 5, and flat 6. That works awesome, right? So again, tweaking slightly to give us something that's very, very useful. So that's one change I would make there. The reason I made the B flat in green because it has the perfect 4th in there. You can see the intervals 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 6, and 7. That 4th, it's okay. It's not great. I personally don't use this, but you can see with all these different chord qualities, we've got nearly all the the different qualities that we see commonly in most modern music these days. Dominant with natural tensions, dominant with altered tensions, dominant augmented, major 7 sharp 11, major 7, minor 7 flat 5, sus flat 9, all the minor chords. The only one where you might be missing here is like a major 7 with a sharp 5. But we just looked at this G7 altered chord and tweaked that B, right? We tweaked the C to turn it into a B to give us this other scale that we just played. Well, another chord that's in there, if we had those notes, in other words, if I make this instead of the 4th, make it the 3rd of a G, this note would become a B natural. Well, look at, we've got E flat, G natural, B natural, and D. That's an E flat major 7 sharp 5, right? E flat, G, B natural, and D. So if we played an E flat major 7 sharp 5 and change this note to a B natural, but keep everything else the same. So if we add sharp 5 to this list, we can see we have basically all the chord colors. So hopefully this is useful to you, this idea of mapping it out, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, picking the ones that you find useful, I think is very helpful. I tend not to go into great detail about fingerings and how you would lay this on the fingerboard. I think that's something that's worth discovering on your own. You will find patterns throughout this stuff. The reason I don't like the nomenclature, the names, is because, for example, this one being called Dorian pentatonic. It's great for this application, but it doesn't make any sense for these applications. It's really about intervals and knowing your intervals. And once you experiment with this stuff, you'll start to see these pentatonic patterns coming up. You say, oh yeah, that particular shape is the same one I play all the time on this other context. I did make a video that you might find of interest about patterns versus intervals. Again, I'll link that one here as well, to explore a bit more of looking at things from an intervallic perspective rather than from fingerings and patterns. Because if it's pattern based, you're going to run into tons of patterns. You're just not going to be able to keep up with all of them because there's so many. But if you learn the intervals, you will start to see those patterns just appear in your playing. So hopefully this gives you some more uses for this very underutilized pentatonic scale. It has a lot of colors, a lot of applications. Hope you can incorporate it into your sound. Good luck.